Hello, good afternoon. Welcome and thanks for joining us. We will be starting shortly. Let's see if some other people will be joining us, and then we'll go ahead and start. In the interest of time, we'll go ahead and start. Again, welcome everyone. My name is Mercy Mugo. I am the Executive Director at the Quality Education for Minorities Network. We are one of the partners on the AAAS STEM Rec, and we are very delighted to have you join us for today's session. Just a quick housekeeping announcement. The human-generated captions can be seen in the Zoom window by clicking on the cross-captioning button, the CC button, and then you select show caption, and then you'll be able to see that in a separate browser window. And the link is in the chat. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Jamila, for sharing that. If you want cross captioning, you can click on that link that is shared in the chat. Just a little bit about this session. This session is supported by the STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, STEM Rec. This initiative was funded by NSF to create a greater infrastructure, build community, coordinate work, and synthesize findings across the over 600 funded STEM projects across the nation. The REC promotes the exchange of ideas, resources, opportunities, and knowledge about effective strategies and practices to increase the participation of students from low-income backgrounds in STEM education and workforce. Today's goal is to explore strategies for recruiting and enhancing student participation in STEM program activities. And this is how we are going to spend our 90 minutes together. First, we'll hear from a panel of current and past STEM grantees. We are engaged in interactive Q&A, and then we also network with other STEM peers and PIs, where we'll get an opportunity to share about our experiences, learning our STEM projects, our experiences recruiting and retaining students in our projects, so that we can all learn from each other. Before we begin today's discussion, let's start with a quick, very quick icebreaker. I do know that the STEM grant exemplifies a self-raised initiative for PI because the priority is mainly on the educational advancement and financial needs of students. I do know that recently a research component was added to the grant, and so at least the PI is able to do research, but also at the same time, we do know that majority of the funds go towards supporting students. So given this context, we just wanted to know very briefly what inspired you to submit an STEM grant. Feel free to share in the chat about what was your inspiration to go for an STEM funding, so that we can, all get inspired and learn as to why, you chose to go for a grant that mainly supports students. So I have shared the question in the chat. Feel free to use the next 1 minute or two to share, and I'll review that shortly. Thank you, Krista. You are inspired to work with MSIs on success of Ocean STEM students. That's awesome. The financial struggle of students, yeah, that's always a biggie. Being able to support students with financial aid to complete their education is always very supportive. To develop the transfer pipeline, yeah, that's also another big one, especially because they get sometimes there is a lot of student support in the 2-year college. So being able to facilitate that as they join the 4-year college, I think is really good in continuing to support students. Boosting low-income California students to get into graduate school. Yeah, that's awesome. Increasing graduation rates and workforce readiness. Thanks for sharing. All right. Thanks everyone who has shared what inspired them to pursue an STEM grant. It's very inspirational to see, all the reasons as to why you chose to do this. All right. At this time, I want to introduce our panelists today. All our panelists are either current or past STEM recipients or grantees. And they're going to share with us some of those strategies that they have found effective in recruiting and engaging students in their program activities. I'll read their short bio and I'll go in alphabetic order. First, we have Dr. Elodie Billionaire, who is a professor in the School of Engineering and Technology at Miami-Dade College. Dr. Billionaire is a committed STEMinist, advancing STEM education access and success for underrepresented students. As principal investigator of the STEM Maya project, she supported STEM students transferring from community college to four-year university, while the STEM Rep project equips bachelor's students in computing with workforce and graduate readiness skills and training in emerging technologies. Her commitment to inclusive education has earned her numerous accolades, including 2023 AACC DLP Panel Distinguished Faculty Award and the 2019 Women of Color in STEM Education Leadership Award. Next up, we have Dr. Diana De La Rosa Paul, who is an instructional assistant professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Houston. Her research includes biomedical image analysis. She has made significant contributions to academic conferences and publications on engineering education, particularly focused on student engagement and first-year course design. Dr. De La Rosa Paul is a recipient of an STEM grant. Her project aims to support high-achieving, low-income STEM students at the University of Houston. She has provided over 80 scholarships over 5 years to students pursuing bachelor's degree in STEM fields. The program includes a comprehensive set of activities such as scholarly orientation, supplemental instruction, and mentored research to promote student success and timely graduation. Our next panelist is Dr. Riv Riskin, who received her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from MIT and her graduate degrees in the same field from Stanford. She was a professor of electrical and computer engineering at the University of Washington, where she was faculty director of the advanced program for women faculty in STEM for 20 years, and founded their STEM STARS program for students from limited income backgrounds in engineering and computer science. She's currently at Stevens Institute of Technology, where she's the Dean of Undergraduate Education and Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering. At Stevens, she runs an office of 11 people who work to provide undergraduate students with the best possible academic experience. Last but not least, we have Dr. Jan Suji, who holds a PhD in genetics and has served over 30 years in higher education as a teaching faculty member, department chair, division chair, and assistant dean. He is lead PI on 2 STEM grants, a track 2, where he heads an interdisciplinary grant team of biology, chemistry, environmental science, and psychology faculty member. On his other STEM grant, which is a track 1, he is also a lead PI on that one. He has served on several review panels, as well as the STEM new PI bootcamp panelist. He currently serves as the assistant dean and directs faculty and curriculum assessment and evaluation in all the university's STEM fields, including engineering and computer science. He oversees all STEM student support activities, including tutoring, advising, internship, and clubs. He has a history of supporting diverse populations, including mentoring underrepresented students in the McNair program, advising low-income students in the Siena Heights STEM program, and advocating for LGBTQs. At this point, I will invite each of the panelists to provide a very brief overview of their STEM project in less than 2 minutes. Please provide an overview of your STEM project, including the number of students you've served and some of the strategies you've found effective in recruiting students. Ed, we can start with June. June?
Yes, thank you so much. Siena Heights University is it's a very small private university. It's a 4-year institution, and our STEM program recruited students directly from high school to our university, and we use course-based undergraduate research experiences to engage the students in STEM research projects, but we also supported their motivation for learning using positive psychology. To recruit those students, we work closely with our admissions and the financial aid departments. We employed our current STEM scholars in our admissions department and had them serve as STEM ambassadors. We reached out to the parents or guardians of prospective students and for support as STEM advocates. And we also used the NSF education and training application website. On a personal note, I was born with a speech impairment, and it's been a true honor to support the students in our STEM program, some of whom have disabilities. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Ed. Also sharing all of the strategies that you're using to recruit students. Eve, do you want to share about your program and ways in which you found effective when you had an STEM program?
Okay, so hi, good afternoon. I had 2 STEMs at my previous institution, University of Washington. The first was back in 2010, and primarily we funded transfer students in the College of Engineering who had already been admitted to their department. The way we located students was we got the word out among faculty, and often if they would meet a student who was struggling, they would send them to us. And so we were able to swoop in and help support and retain some of these fabulous students. I just saw one on LinkedIn today mention that he just got a new job at Amazon Lab 126. So it was a wonderful experience. The second STEM, I was the PI of a 6-institution consortium grant that went between 2016 and 2022. And we all had red shirt programs in engineering. So based on a program called the Gold Shirt program at Colorado Boulder, all of these students had 5 years to go through their engineering or computer science programs instead of 4, with the idea being that slow and steady wins the race. All of the students, at least at UW, they were recruited from high schools that had at least 30% of the students on free and reduced price lunch, and most had Pell Grants, so again, recruited directly from high school, like we just heard. And I left over 2 years ago, but the last data I looked at showed that they were called STAR students. The STAR students had a 5-point higher graduation rate from the UW than the overall 6-year graduation rate. So even though these are really some of the most underprivileged students, underserved students in the toughest majors, they did really, really well. And so it was just it was an honor to work with such amazing young people. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, and great to hear that there was that impact where the STEM students were graduating at a higher rate than the other students. At this time, Erodi, do you want to share a little bit about your project?
Sure. So my first STEM grant was called STEMIA, and is dated from 2018. And that first grant was focusing on the first 2 years in an associate degree and focusing on transfer students. So making sure that they have successfully passing those STEM courses, math and sciences, which is always difficult for students to stay in our STEM programs, and successfully transferring to for university to complete their bachelor program. So really the partnership with community college and university was essential to make sure they meet the requirement to transfer and be ready to pursue the bachelor program at the school. For my current STEM grant that started in 2022, this one I'm focusing on the last 2 years in the community college before a bachelor program in cybersecurity, data analytics, and information system technology. And this one I'm really focusing, we are, not just myself, we are focusing pretty much on workforce readiness. So making sure they are ready for, having their resume for tech industry interview prep, technical interview prep, and making sure they have, those leading industry certification that add value to their resume. So really focusing in them completing their bachelor degree at Miami College, but also their post-graduation plans in terms of entering the workforce or pursuing graduate degree in computing.
For sharing about your project. Diana?
Hi. So our program is a 2-year program. It's the first and second years. It's STEM, so it goes across 3 colleges. Well, now we're 2 because we just merged a couple, but it was technology, natural science, and engineering. We recruit 20 students from all 3 of those colleges, so we get a total for a total of 20 for each cohort. And we've had 4 cohorts. We actually had a little extra money, so we kicked in a couple extra in this last one. So we've done 82 students so far. And this is our last cohort. We're coming to an end here in April. Our recruiting, has been an interesting story of lots and lots of challenges for my program, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But we started out with a summer bridge program, and that was where we were recruiting from. That ended the very first year after we did that. So in being naive, I thought, oh, I'll send out hundreds and hundreds of emails and I'll get hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and that didn't work at all. And so we ended up later partnering with another student success program that has a lot of overlap. They are a first generation student success program, and they do a lot of recruiting for us. So that really helps. The 2 classes are technical and research based. We do a lot of technical hands-on courses. They're required courses because way back then when I got this STEM, we were allowed to do that. So we require them to take 4 courses, their first 4 semesters. So we stay with them a long time and do a lot of community building. And that has worked really well. We can't do that in future STEM proposals. So we've kind of found a workaround there where we have required courses for their degree programs, and that's how we plan to move forward with Endeavor.
Thank you everyone for sharing about all your projects. I hear about the value and the importance of collaborating with different stakeholders to help with the recruitment, going into the high schools, having other, avenues to do the recruitment. And we do know that recruitment is just one piece of the puzzle when you're working with STEM students. So my next question is written to, once you recruit them, how do you keep them engaged in program activities, and how do you keep them motivated to be to participate in program activities? And at this time, I can start with Elodie.
Sure. So it's a little bit tricky. When you recruit them, the motivation is financial, let's just be honest. That's how you get them in, right? So how do you keep them actually participating in the extracurriculum activity? Because for STEM grants, you cannot force them to participate in the extracurriculum activity that outside of the courses, right? It's really optional, right? And so the way that we've done it is really at the beginning when we recruit the student during orientation, we pick their brain. What are the essential activities that you think will help you out to grow and help you out to achieve your goals, your education goals, and hopefully your career goals? So we recruit those information from the student through a survey or through a Zoom chat, right? And we put that together and we go back to our team and we schedule design activity based on the student feedback. So some of the activity that we do for our grant in our case is a speaker series that focus on workforce preparation. So it could be like, for example, in our case, we have resume review where students already have their resume already done. And then we have them doing the group chat where we have industry partner that actually review, give them feedback on their resume. That's an example, right? Other thing that we do is mentorship, which is a crucial element for our students to stay engaged, but also to make sure like any student that's at risk is still being reached out. You know, as faculty, it can be difficult to do that, but when we have those alerts or triggers that tells the student is not doing well in the class, or maybe not showing up, not doing their homework, or not attending the extracurricular activity, we'll reach out to them. And we have a mentor, faculty mentor that's dedicated to our students, like a group of students based on the major, to reach out to the student and have those meetings. Some of them decide to do group meeting, others do more one-on-one. So our mentors meet at least once a month, sorry, with the student to, are you on track? How the classes are feeling, any issue with the classes or even personal matters. Because oftentimes we only focus on education, but a lot of our students, low-income students, have a lot of issue in the personal life. You know, our students are non-traditional, mainly at Miami-Dade College. They work full-time, they're married, they have children. And so all those factors, external factors, need to be encountered when we design activity to make sure that, you know, we are flexible with the time. If they cannot attend, we record the session and we make that available, and we follow up with a survey, you know, to get the feedback on that. I'll let someone else to add to it.
Thank you. Diana, do you want to add to that? I like how you took the time to first identify student needs and then design your programs based off that. I think that is awesome.
So I'm a bit spoiled because I can require them to take the courses, and so they're in 4 courses with us. Originally, it was supposed to be 1 year in engineering and 1 year in natural science, which made sense because we had, you know, students from all over STEM. One of the challenges that we had is that my co-PI left immediately after we got the grant, and he was the NSM person. So it came down to just an engineering, and we had to just sort of make it work with that whole group. But in those classes, I've been developing first year curriculum for a long time. So I've got a lot of tools in my toolbox. And so I knew what worked, and we just, you know, developed a course or courses around the things that works, which is team-based, hands-on projects, and lots of them that help them build up their resume. And then we put a lot of personal development lectures in, a lot of professional development. We train them for career fair. We train them for interviews. We make them, as part of the course, go to career fairs. So, you know, everything I do can be a grade. And so, you know, these are really high achieving students. It doesn't matter how many points I give them for something. They want the points because they're all, you know, academic stars and they want high grades. And so they go, and once they start doing that, once we start doing all of these, you know, community things together, we do things as a group, we check them into the career fairs, and we, you know, we coach them, we introduce them to recruiters, and coach them on how to talk to recruiters and all of that. They really start to buy in. And then they know that what we're doing is really helping them get internships early. It's helping them get scholarships. It's helping them in programs. And so then they stick around, and they tend to believe that, you know, we're doing this for their good. And so and that is a challenge that, you know, I've heard from a lot of STEM people, is that if it's not required, how do you get them there? And it's really challenging. So by moving to a new model where we're going to hijack essentially the required first year courses and cohort them there, then I think we can continue to do what we've been doing in the past that has really worked, because the special sauce is really putting them together a lot, and they will come together and form that those friendships, those really important early friendships and support networks.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And it feels like all of those elements in your program are really geared towards exposing students early and putting them out there so they can be prepared to get into the workforce. Right. Eve, do you want to share some of the way you are able to retain students in your program?
Sure. So first of all, the first year we had the STARS program, we did not interview the students, and so there were some issues where some didn't fully buy into what they were entering, which was, a huge commitment of working really hard, required extra courses, supplemental instruction, activities. This is pre-ESTM, so we set it up where they were expected to attend, and boy, did they ever, because they knew they needed to. But then the second year, we started interviewing students. So then they came in and they really understood what they were getting themselves into. Now, back in the olden days, it was not that easy to be admitted to an engineering department at the University of Washington. So we had this carrot, which said, if you do well in your first and later your first 2 years, it became, then you can pretty much pick your major. And so that was an enormous incentive to get the students to buy in. And also echoing what Diana said, that there was so many resources and professional development and opportunities that the students really recognized that they were getting a very special opportunity to be in STARS. And so they did buy in. In a sense, it was like having a small private university. We had only 30 students a year in this enormous public. UW is one of the largest publics in the country. And so the students, I think, really recognized that, how much they were getting from it. So they mostly fell in line. I mean, there were certainly come to the wall conversations now and then when, somebody did something wrong. And honestly, so many people by the end knew about STARS that if a student went to an event and was on their phone during the event, somehow it would get back to the leadership and the students would say, you've got spies all over campus. And kind of we did. So they really learned a lot of professional skills, and they've gone on and been very successful. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I remember when we met, you had shared about how you had to involve guardians and family involvement in setting the expectation. Can you talk a little bit about how that process was like, and if you found that to be effective in maybe student persistence in the program?
Sure. So, and this was primarily done by my former colleague, Sonia Cunningham, who, I got the grant initially from the STEP program at NSF, but then Sonia built the program. She intuitively knew what the students needed, first-gen students from limited income backgrounds. And so when the students were dropped off for the Bridge Week, there would be a special session of just the families, parents, guardians, and the STARS staff. And that's where the staff would explain to the parents and guardians, you have to let your students be full-time students, because this is a really rigorous and competitive environment. And unfortunately, they are not going to be always able to come home and help their younger siblings with their homework or help you move apartments. And we later required the students to live on campus for 2 years so that they had, the separation from what could have been demands on the students. There were difficult conversations with students about, you can't send your scholarship money home to your family. We understand you want to, and we understand your parents need the money, but this investment is so that you can help your family once you get your degree. So the work, we would say, was one student at a time. When students are coming from, we had students from migrant families, not just first gen, not just, Pell Grant, but I remember on one of our applications, we had gender, man, woman, other. So we thought we were really cool and modern. But then when we had parent level of education, and it started at some high school, we would get applications where there were no boxes checked because there were students whose families, parents or guardians stopped schooling in 3rd or 4th grade. So we had to keep adding categories. So the ability to go from a migrant family to then getting a high-paying computer science job is really transformational. And I think the students, and we tried to get the families to understand this is in the future, but please bear with us and trust the process. So.
Thanks for sharing that. I'll shift things a little bit here. John, I know when we were planning for this meeting, we were looking at one of the issues that came up from the last webinar was the issue of FAFSA and how to support students during that process. And that came up in our conversation. And you did mention that that has not been an issue for you because you have the infrastructure to support that. Can you share a little bit about how you work with the financial aid office to support your STEM students?
Yes, thank you. I think we often encourage our students to network in order to find employment opportunities or internships. And sometimes I think we forget to that we need to network too. And sometimes it's helpful if we model good networking on our own campus by forming good relationships with key personnel in our financial aid and admissions departments. So part of that is when we were recruiting for our STEM programs, we would meet with those key personnel on a monthly basis. So we would let them know, this is what the requirements are of our STEM program. These are the number of students that we're looking at to recruit in that particular year. And that was, I thought that was very helpful. I mean, a lot of times when we had these monthly meetings, the same questions would come up. They were wondering, like, what are the requirements? Even though, we talked about that at the last meeting. So, I mean, they have very busy schedules, as do we. So I think it's good to have those constant touch points to try and work together. Now I was thinking about that question about the helping students with their FAFSA, and we have actually had students who did not complete their FAFSA in a timely fashion. And, the way that we find out is often in a roundabout fashion. But once I learn about those instances, then I reach out to the students. So that could be via text or phone call, and just kind of asking them, hey, how's your summer going? By the way, can you please work on your FAFSA? And oftentimes the issue isn't with the student, but they need help from their parent or guardian. So sometimes, if need be, we need professionals in our financial aid department to kind of step in to help out in those situations. So that may be helpful if that were to arise for other people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Diana, you mentioned partnering with partner.org to assist students. Can you talk a little bit about how that relationship is and the kind of support the students get?
So we partnered with a campus-wide organization. I just, with all of the issues we had at the beginning of the grant with, losing personnel, I started just calling in favors all around campus. And I met a woman who runs this first generation student success program. And she's just amazing. She has over 300 students that she manages every year. And one of the things that she does with them is she has FAFSA workshops. And so she wants them to actually work on that while she's standing there in front of a big auditorium, and have them doing it right then and there so that they can ask questions as soon as they hit issues. And that is really wonderful because she does it very early. She knows that, the earlier you get this done, the better, and the more likely you're to get money. And so she does it as soon as she can do it, as soon as that opens up. And she does, a few of those. And so that is very, very helpful. We're really grateful to have her helping us with that.
Thank you. It seems like you have a dedicated person just to support that area, which is awesome. All right. In the interest of time, I'll ask the final question. And you alluded to it, Diana, when you mentioned that you faced a few challenges during this journey. So I'll again start with you to share about what are some of those challenges and how did you overcome. So each of the panelists will share that within the next 5 minutes. So let's keep it to 1 minute per panelist.
Right. So as I mentioned, that one of our challenges is that we had a huge reorg between two different colleges. So one of the strengths of our grant was that we had two 40-year programs, student success programs coming together, sharing resources. And then right when we got the grant and started going, there was huge reorg and we lost just about everybody we had. We had a dedicated advisor, we had a dedicated counselor, we had a dedicated recruiter. The other co-PI was a co-teacher. We had a K through 12 outreach. I mean, we had so many people, and suddenly they were all gone. And so it just took a whole lot of legwork at the beginning to run around and find other partners and find other organizations on campus that were doing similar things that were willing to help out. We even had another STEM grant who was teaching research courses, and I needed those research courses taught because that was one of the things I lost, and they were willing to just take in our students and just allow them to join that class. And so we were able to get the research course in. The chairs have also been really helpful in allowing me, some course space to count these Endeavor courses as part of my teaching load. Since we lost our counselor, we brought in the university counseling and psychological services group. So now they come into class and they help us. So we went to a bigger scope. We looked at what are the university resources that are already there that we could just piggyback off of, and we were able to fill all of those gaps.
Thank you for sharing, and glad that you're able to leverage some resources that already existed at the institution. Eve, do you want to share any of the challenges you may have faced and how you overcame them?
Yes, so one of the things that we were faced with STARS is that it was very, very successful. It became highly visible because our students are walking around campus with purple sweatshirts. And everybody then, when they learn about a successful program to help underserved students, they want to scale it. And they want to collaborate, and they want to make it bigger. And we tried that. We got a grant to make it bigger, and it was just very unwieldy. So we then had to go back and say, no, we are only going to have 30 a year. And I think sometimes we were seen as not as collaborative as people would have liked. But so what we did was we would go back to what was our mission. Our mission was to help these students graduate, and not as important was playing nicely in all of the sandboxes that wanted to be, in our working with us. So what we did instead was then, offer to talk to people and share our curricula, share our processes. I actually got a third STEM grant and hosted a workshop in June 2022 back at the University of Washington for like 30 colleges all over the country to learn about the model. But at home, we really had to stay in our lane and stick to your principles and put the students first, even if people maybe are giving you the stink eye.
Thank you for sharing that. Elodie?
I think in my case, I learned a lot from my first STEM grant. Like Diana, as soon as I got the grant, some of the PI were not anymore in the institution, or they decided to change, right? And so for my second STEM grant, the same thing happened for one of my PI who actually got promoted at another college, right? Actually moved. And so for my second STEM grant, I had that in mind. I had my plan B. If something happened, I can piggyback on somebody else, right? So when I selected my PI, when I collaborate with my PI, I always had the backup plan in case, they leave the college or something happened. I know who to bring on board. So when that PI informed me that they were leaving, if that's going to be okay, they want to help you out. They want to make sure everything is good before they leave, right? I already had a plan B, which was to replace that PI with another person, which was helpful because, when you start your STEM grant, everything go fast. You have to set up the budget, you have to start the recruitment, you have to start having those meetings. So it's very important that you have your team all together right away, right? So I learned from my first STEM that. The second one is low income. With the economy, you have students who think they are low income, but they're not. When they fill out the 5-star, they're not eligible. And I feel bad about it, right? But we have to go by what 5-star tell us. So when I work with my point of contact, who's also the financial aid director, but also the one who distributes the scholarship, we have to check that, right? And so you have to keep that in mind and really educate faculty, students about what low income is for them to qualify for the grant. And as June mentioned, in my case, before they even get in the program, they have to be financial eligible. They cannot start the program and they cannot attend the orientation until all those checkpoints have been done. So that can be a challenge because, you know, if you get your grant, depending when your project starts, you have to have that time to make sure you have all your cohorts ready and all the paperwork, check all the requirements they must have. And FAFSA can take a lot of time because like some students do not know how to fill it out, the form, and they need help. And that can be like you will think it's like a 1 day or 2 day process, but for some students, it will take a whole month, right? And you do have students who are eligible, but they don't want to fill out the FAFSA application because it's too long, they don't understand. So again, be able to have a dedicated person to help them out, to walk them through the process, or even sit down with them and fill out the form, then that's what you want to do, right? Because if not, you're going to miss out on a lot of eligible students. Something else that was a challenge is like I have students who have to leave the program. For example, I just learned yesterday that one of the students who attended the conference, who presented the research, their significant other got a job out of state and they have to move. So that's mean they cannot stay in the program for spring, which is the last semester. They had to complete the program because we don't have any online classes for them to actually complete the program. All the required courses in last semester for the program is actually blended or in person. So that's some aspect that you have to think about, right? You start with a cohort. In my case, I started with 73. I already have 9 who graduate early, and I still have 63. And now I'm down to 62, and maybe, you know, I don't know what's going to happen because students' personal life, because some of them I mentioned, they're married, they have families. So it's not just them, you know, things that happen in the environment may be a direct impact in terms of their participation or even staying in the program. And we don't have control over that, right? And so we have to be understanding and also try to find different option, alternative for them to finish the program. But if they cannot, then, you know, it's a loss for our program, but also there's nothing else we can do. And we have to be understanding about them deciding to leave the program.
Thanks so much for sharing all those challenges and some of the ways you've been able to overcome them. Jan, very quickly, what are some of the challenges and how did you overcome?
Yes, thank you. I remember when we started our Track 1 grant, you know, it seems like everything was a challenge. I mean, I just felt like everything was a struggle. Recruiting was a nightmare, and you know, trying to keep students engaged was also problematic. And I think what really helped us out was looking at what other STEM programs were doing, because I kind of knew that, you know, some of the things that were working for some programs probably would not work well at my institution. So I remember that during the pandemic that the STEM conference was online, and all the posters were online, and I actually read every poster, you know, looking at every abstract, trying to, you know, look for ideas that would help us out, and that's where we came up with the ideas that we are utilizing today. So I guess that's what I would encourage. I applaud everyone who's online today to try and gain as much as you can, try and meet as many other STEM PIs out there and see what they're doing, and then maybe see if that maybe would work for you. And it's okay to make adjustments. It's okay to realize that things aren't working well. You know, just that's fine. It's okay, and then try and make adjustments. So thank you.
Thank you to all of you for sharing what your journey has been, not just what you've really succeeded in, but also some of the challenges you had and how you overcame, because I believe that even learning from challenges is also a learning, a lesson. At this point, I want to open the floor for any questions that people may have. Please feel free to raise your hand, come off chat, and ask any question before we go into breakout session. There are a few questions on the chat. There's a question on why you're, I think this is probably to John, why your recruitment strategies from trial and error, or were there known resources, e.g. website articles, video that provided probably best practices for recruiting?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I know when we originally wrote our proposal, we were using a recruitment strategy that had been published and worked well for that team. But it turned out that trying to implement that at our university did not work well. So sometimes there is some trial and error involved here. And then, trying to see, well, what else has been used by others that can be applicable to helping us out. So I think, like the example that I gave, using a current STEM scholar, having that person employed in admissions, giving tours, meeting prospective students, speaking about the STEM program and about their own experience. I think that student perspective sometimes carries more weight than anything I can say about our program. So that's one thing that I think would probably work for everyone. Thank you.
If I may add to it, a website is a good start to get visibility. In our case, we have a website on the School of Engineering and Technology, which is a go-to where students, look at the programs and they can see different scholarship or grant that may be eligible that they can apply to. A second one, students usually have to meet with an advisor. So we have a little flyer with the advisor. So when they meet with students, they can promote the program. Also, in our case, we use email campaign, right? Based on, we work with financial aid and scholarship to see the student eligible for our program. And we design campaign that go out every week or once a month, depending how many students we still need to recruit. And our campaign will go to the our institution email and also the personal email. And also it does text message if they have a cell phone on file. And then if all fail, again, you have to try what's going to get the student attention is trying to do, back in the day, sending a mail, physical mail. But when you send an email, the subject line is important. In our case, what we did is saying, congratulations, you're receiving a scholarship. So I'm not telling them there's a scholarship available, but it's like, you already meet the requirements. So congratulations, you already got it. Now we just need for you to finalize the last step, which is pretty much doing the application, right? And then we'll follow up with that. So the subject line is important to get attention. And we all know that students do not read the institution email, right? But the subject that can catch their attention, they will most likely click on it. And again, we had to play with subject lines several times until we got it.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a question on what do you do when students lose scholarship due to being Pell Grant ineligible?
Yeah, I'll field that one. My understanding, and please, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have to have, be Pell eligible, and Pell eligibility, varies with the economy. So as long as they still have unmet need, you can still keep them and give them the scholarships, right? As long as it's really, you're defining your population. But does somebody want to correct that?
So I'm not going to correct, I'm just going to give my little piece regarding my institution. The way we do it is like they have to be Pell eligible. That's how we check if they're based on the 5-star. But it may be different at the institution. Again, it's based on your institution policy, right? So it may not be the same at your institution, but in my institution, they have to be Pell eligible to be able to apply for my grant.
But when I applied for mine, we were allowed to define low income ourselves. So we could define high achieving and we could define low income, and Pell eligible was a requirement, but we have a lot of wiggle room in there because it's our own definition. And yes, and so we look at, you know, expected family contribution, and I know it's called something else now, and also looked at unmet need. So we looked at some different things, and we were able to have some wiggle room in doing that. And kind of on a related note, we were also able to have some wiggle room with their grades. So I spoke to my program officer because there were some people who were no longer in good standing, and that was another requirement. But, you know, I found that when we got to that point, I really hated to take money away from a student who was already struggling. And we know that part of the reason they're struggling is because they have to work. And we just feel like we're making things worse if we start to rescind this money. We want to keep them in school and keep supporting them. And NSF told us that was fine if we could make a good argument of how this, you know, student still had high potential, then we were able to continue to fund them.
And then also something to keep in mind is like a high achiever, right? Because even myself, for my grant, they have to have a minimum GPA of 3.0. You define it in your grant, because I do know when I attend the conference, another PI, the GPA was 2.8. So it all depends of your population and how they currently performing. That's how you define those criteria for your grant, right? It doesn't mean they have to have a 3.5 or even a 4.0 to be high achiever, right? That could be like a characteristic, it doesn't have to be demonstrated to a GPA, right? But you should still have a standard for the GPA in terms of your student participating in your grant.
Thank you. And I think there's a follow-up question from Sandeep about how to define low income. And I think to Diana's point, it's what the institution policy defines as low income. Is that correct? Like it may vary depending on the institution?
So for the new proposals, you have to work with financial aid, and you have to ask them for how they would define low income at the institution. We were allowed to define that ourselves. So we had an EFC of less than 5,000. And of course, you know, they had to have some gap in their tuition, and be Pell eligible. So those were the only two requirements. But again, we had some wiggle room in there. So, you know, as long as it was, some students had an EFC, you know, that was just outside of the limit, and, you know, that was okay. We thought they were a good candidate. We could still take them.
I'll take one more. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for this discussion. Actually, we are we're right now trying to redefine our definition, because we are losing students because of Pell Grant ineligibility. So that's why I asked that question. Thank you.
Awesome. I'll take the last question, which is Sarah says they have seen students who are high performing struggle with reading comprehension. And so her question is if any of your programs is addressing this and how they're going about that. If this is an issue you are experiencing as well, and how your program may be addressing it. All right.
Is it possible to maybe clarify by reading comprehension? What would be a scenario? I'm trying to understand. And maybe because my program is focusing on the last 2 years, and maybe that's not an issue, although we have a lot of ESL students, but that's not been an issue. But in my previous STEM grants, when I was focusing on the first 2 years, the one that was doing associate degree, because they were ESL students, I did see that as, because, I mean, in the case because they're ESL students, right? They're still learning English per se, and being bilingual or multilingual, right? And so in that case, we work with the ESL office for them to be able to assist them with tutoring or providing additional courses that can help them out regarding the readiness, in this case, is English languages. But I'm not sure that's what the question is about. So if Sarah can maybe clarify the question, so maybe we can answer the question.
Sarah, do you want to come off mute and ask the question, or are you okay with the response that Erodi provided? Okay, she's good. All right. At this point, I just want to really appreciate the valuable perspectives that our panelists provided. Thank you so much for all your insights. We also want to provide an opportunity for all of you to connect with each other in small groups, share about your experience with the STEM programs, and, you know, because I know there are a range of perspectives that exist in this group. And so we're going to break into into four groups, and each panelist will be in a separate group. This is a space to reflect on the insights you've had, reflect on your own STEM program, some of those things that you're doing, share with your peers. And each group has a Google document where they'll have access to the prompt questions that will guide the discussion. During that time, when you go into the small group session, make sure to, one, take a few minutes to introduce each other or for quick introduction, and then have someone facilitate the conversation. Since the panelists are there, you can help with facilitating the conversation, and then make note of one or two key takeaways that you can come back and share with the group, so we can all be learning about, you know, some of the strategies that you found effective. So at this point, Jamila, you can put that into breakout session, and we'll share the links to the Google Docs. Again to our panelists and also to everyone's contribution during the small group discussions. A lot of insights were shared. At this point, I want to share a few resources and opportunities that are available in the STEM Rec. One, there is a webinar coming up on November 18th, and it's focused on knowledge generation in STEM research. So if you've not registered for that session, feel free to register for it. Jamila, thanks for sharing the link to that event in the chat. Then the other thing I need to bring to your attention is please check the STEM Rec deep dive report. They are focused, they are generated on core topical areas that are, you know, significant to the work that we do. So last year's report was focused on STEM students' sense of belonging. The information can be found on the STEM Rec website. And the next report is actually connected with today's topic. It's about scholars' identification and selection, and being able to document what are some of those best practices for doing that, so that we can share with the wider community. So be on the lookout for data correction that will start in the first quarter of 2025. And if you have any questions about that, Julius Ajab, who is in this session, he's part of the AAAS team, is in charge of the deep dive. So you can always email him, and I'll share his email on the chat if you have any questions or need to hear more information. Oh, thanks, Jamila, for sharing the email from for Julius. The other thing I want to ask of you is, please take a few minutes to provide us with feedback about today's session. We value your input as we use that to improve future sessions. So we have a very short survey. It will not take more than 3 minutes to just let us know about your experience today and anything we can do to improve future session, as well as any other topics you may want to hear about in the spring. We have similar sessions in the fall and the spring. So if there's something you're passionate about or you'd want to learn about from your peers, we always aim to bring STEM peers who can speak from their own experience, so that others can learn from, you know, their lessons learned. Again, thank you so much to our panelists, to everybody who participated. Connect with us through our social media platforms. We are in Twitter, we are in X, LinkedIn, Instagram. You know, if you're not connected, follow us on those platforms. Again, thank everyone for joining us, for your perspective, for your engagement. We truly appreciate. And the video recording will be available in the coming weeks for, you know, all of you, as well as the broader STEM community. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.